Hey everyone! Lately I've been asked a lot of questions on Discord or comments, and most of the time they are always repeating themselves. So today I've decided to sum up the top questions, or rather topics, that are relevant now in Phase 4 in Icecrown Citadel. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Do I cast Gift of the Wild as a part of the rotation because of the spell power buff of 2-piece tier 10 bonus? Short answer, no. It's not worth it to do all the other things, so you pretty much give up the wild only to fish for the clear casting proc, only as a movement option or prior to pull. Then there's the topic of 4-piece tier 10 and questions related to it, like when are we supposed to switch the rotation, are we using Moonfire, are we using Insect Swarm, when to reapply them, when to refresh, what glyphs to use in with, and so on. So what is the Phase 3 and Phase 4 rotation? I think it's fairly known that when it comes to the rotation in Phase 3, the old rotation was Moonfire at max uptime and Insect Swarm mostly unused while using Glyphs of Starfall, Moonfire and Insect Swarm. The new rotation that seems the most on paper in Phase 4 is keeping Insect Swarm almost at max uptime and Moonfire completely unused, leaving it mostly as a movement filler, and that's if you're using the Insect Swarm and Focus Glyph combination. Now, when do I switch from the old rotation to the new one? I've already discussed this a few months ago in the Phase 4 Druid base list, rotation and glyph changes video. I'm linking it down in the description. And you might remember this picture where we discovered that the best time to shift to the new rotation and new glyphs is as soon as you get your 4-piece tier 10 and the new idol with it, not sooner. Another common question I saw was, why am I getting DPS loss on Sim while I'm having 4-piece tier 10 and Phase 4 rotation? So the common mistakes why the Sim is showing less when going from tier 9 to tier 10 4-piece are: you have to check that your meta gem is active because you were regamming, check that you are spec'd in Omen of Clarity because of 2-piece bonus, and check that you also have the Idol of Lunar Eclipse with your 4-piece tier 10 and not the Idol of Lunar Fury. And check that you are using Phase 4 glyphs, meaning Insect Swarm, Starfall, and Focus. And also check that you are using the Phase 4 rotation on Sim as well. However, despite double checking, if you are still getting DPS loss, fear not, as you might have noticed in other guides that I say you will most likely benefit from the new rotation and glyphs when you get to the 4-piece tier 10 and the new idol, as this is true for majority of people, but there are some rare cases when this might not be true. I was asked a lot why is Sim showing slight DPS loss when switching to the new Insect Swarm rotation and glyphs, while having idol and 4-piece already. This happened to me as well the first week I got it, and as I have a Nibelung, which is missing a secondary stat, my crit value was pretty low. And in this case, according to Sim, using the old Phase rotation was still better in terms of DPS, even though I had the new idol and 4-piece tier 10. This is probably because of the improved Insect Swarm talent, when having the Moonfire up to boost the crit rating of Starfire is still more beneficial when you are lower on crit. But this changed as soon as I got a couple of upgrades, and now the Phase 4 rotation has an edge already, so I shifted to Insect Swarm. So now, when to reapply Insect Swarm in Phase 4? You might remember that we were keeping the Moonfire at max uptime in Phase 3, and it was the best spent global cooldown in terms of DPS, beating even Starfire in Lunar Eclipse because of the synergy of tier 9 bonus with Moonfire Glyph. That's why it was suggested even to multidot and refresh it as soon as it falls off, no matter the eclipse. This is not the case, however, in Phase 4, since we are replacing Moonfire with Insect Swarm together with the Glyph. The dot is not that strong anymore, and using the global cooldown in Lunar Eclipse over Starfire cast is just not worth it. Therefore, you should not refresh it during Lunar Eclipse, but refresh it right as the Lunar ends to not lose the crit buff of the idol as it lasts 15 seconds, so should still be up even though the Insect Swarm is not on the target anymore for that short duration. You can see on the sim as well that it's reapplying Instant Storm outside of the lunar eclipse, and when trying to change this, telling him to reapply the Instant Storm even in lunar eclipse, it comes with more than 70 DPS loss. So short answer, keep the Instant Storm as much as possible and refresh it every time it falls off outside of lunar eclipse. So this brings us to next question, which is, are we multidotting in phase 4 with Instant Storm? The answer is no. No Instant or multidotting in phase 4, wait for Cataclysm. So another popular misconception is the Moonfire usage. Are we using Moonfire at all? It's kinda yes and no answer, to be honest. Some are saying we should not use it, some are saying use it before the lunar eclipse. Both are correct depending on the situation. When you are using Glyph of Starfall, Instant Storm and Focus, you should not use the Moonfire unless you are moving. It's not part of the rotation, but it's a nice movement option. Trying to implement it into our rotation before lunar eclipse in this setup comes with around 100 DPS loss in phase 4 best in slot gear. However, if you don't like the range of the Glyph of Focus and you want to use Glyph of Starfire instead, in this case, it's more beneficial to use Moonfire before lunar to get the extended duration of the dot over not using it at all. However, it's such a tiny DPS difference, sometimes even one digit number in phase 4 best in slot gear, to either use it before lunar or not using it at all, and that's why I'm completely skipping Moonfire regardless of whatever glyph I am using, not to lose a nice movement filler option. Because if you are reapplying Moonfire in your rotation before lunar, and then you are suddenly forced to move, you just lost an option to cast. And since in Icecrown Citadel there's tons of movement, chances are high the Moonfire will be up for Starfire casting anyway for extending it, even if you are using the Moonfire only on movement. What should I cast during the movement then? It's a good idea to try to focus on the most effective spend global cooldowns based on the priority list. So spells that are higher on this list, actually. Things like Trance or Starfall are the best options, however, most of the time they are most likely either on cooldown or might be even intentionally delaying it for something like, I don't know, like casting second Trance before Heroism on Execute phase, etc. In this case, refreshing your main dot if it just fell off is the best option, followed by the second unglyph dot if it's not applied on the target already. If both dots are ticking on the target with more than just few seconds left, then Typhoon or Give Up the Wild to get the clear casting proc are next good options. Even Fairy Fire or innervating your healer are fine if no other options on higher on the priority list is available. Just do something on the move. Now one more thing regarding Moonfire. I've seen a lot of questions like, if you are not using Moonfire or using it only on movement a couple of times, why do we have the Improved Moonfire talent? Can't we spec out of it and spend the points elsewhere? Yes, we can. However, the only option is Genesis or Moonglow. Moonglow does not increase the DPS because we should not have any mana issues in phase 4. So the only talent that directly translates into damage is Genesis. But Genesis is such a weak talent that it's a DPS boost only and only if you are sure you will never cast Moonfire. So the encounter where there is close to zero movement. And there is only a one encounter in Icecrown Citadel, and it is Deathbringer Sorfang. Every other encounter we will not benefit from Genesis. To put it into perspective though, let's sim this and imagine we are on Sorfang. We are running Glyphs of Starfall, Insect Swarm and Focus, and we have points in Improved Moonfire and are not casting any Moonfire throughout the whole encounter other than finishing the fight with instant Moonfire if we cannot squeeze one extra card of either Starfire or Wrath. Now let's imagine we want to min-max the DPS, so we spec out of Improved Moonfire and we spec into 3 points in Genesis. So we just spent 2 talents to increase our DPS by 10. And you can see that no Moonfire other than at the end of the fight was casted. However, imagine we are on any encounter that is not a Deathbringer Starfang and we have to move. We will most likely be casting Moonfire on this movement, So let's simulate this by introducing Moonfire into rotation, even making it before lunar only to have it as a best case scenario. So nothing else changed, we have the exact same setup as before, and with just the occasional Moonfire usage, while not having improved Moonfire talent, but rather Genesis, translate into 121 DPS loss. And you can see that only 5 to 6 Moonfires were casted throughout the whole fight, which is a realistic number of movements considering the 3-minute encounter duration. So you are basically spending 2 talent points, risking major DPS loss, sacrificing 10% crit chance that translates into better Nature's Grace uptime, and extra damage on Moonfire for a potential of 10 DPS gain on a static fight where you will be casting only Insect Swarm and nothing else, which is not realistic in Icecrown Citadel at all. So just leave it as it is, it's just not worth it to spec out of Improved Moonfire. Now let's talk about Glyphs again. We all know that the best DPS on paper is using Insect Swarm with Glyphs of Starfall, Insect Swarm and Focus. However, while it's pretty comfortable to use it on a few fights in Icecrown Citadel, like Deadbringer Sarfang, Festergod, Rollface, and perhaps Cindergosa, on other fights though, like Lich King or Blood Queen Lanatel, you have to really pay attention to the range and not to use it while she's in airface, for example, or like proactively reposition on your instant cast to maintain the sweet spot range on Lich King. So it's not really easy and oftentimes can be problematic and stressful. On fights though, like Lady Deadwhisper, for example, or Blood Council or Professor Putricide, you really need the range. Like, not hitting just few stars because of the range while using Glyph of Focus here will most likely turn into a DPS loss compared to an alternative that actually seems less on paper. So if you cannot make sure that you can comfortably starfall and every single star will hit their target 100%, then just switch to an alternative. What is an alternative? I can't say this. What is an alternative though? There we go. Long story short, it's a Glyph of Starfire. To give you some numbers example, simming the Alliance phase for best in slot on a 3-minute fight and 10,000 iterations with demonic pack value of 500, wild magic pre-pod, potion of speed mid-fight, while having engineering and alchemy, the best possible scenario is 15k 141 DPS on paper while having the focus and using Insect Swarm only. Some possibilities that people are considering are Glyphs of Rebirth with no extra damage benefit and used mostly for progression. And then there are Glyph of Starfire and few people even suggesting Glyph of Moonfire. Glyph of Moonfire, however, is the worst option. Even Glyph of Rebirth is better choice, as interestingly, trying to implement Moonfire before Lunar, or let's pretend it's a movement Moonfire, is actually even worse than not using Moonfire at all with this Glyph. And since you nerf the initial damage of the Moonfire with the Glyph, even finishing the boss with direct Moonfire is just not possible, and that's why it seems even less compared to Rebirth. So the best option is Glyph of Starfire that's only around 100 DPS behind the focus when we are using it before Lunar Eclipse. However, as I've already mentioned in this video, you can see that the using Moonfire before Lunar and not using it at all while having the Starfire Glyph seems only at 9 DPS increase. So that's why I'm not even bothering to cast Moonfire before Lunar, not to waste a dot I can cast when I need to move. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and if you like the content, I would appreciate if you like the video and subscribe. Thank you and good luck.